Welcome students, poem number 2 of Flamingo, an elementary school classroom in a slum. Let us first of all see the title of the poem. The title says that there is a school classroom and that is present in a slum. Slum refers to an illegal settlement. And in an illegal settlement, the government doesn't run any school because the government does not provide them basic necessities. Of course, the reason it is an illegal settlement. Then who runs this school? This school must be run by an NGO. Somebody must be providing money to that NGO, and the NGO has opened this school for the slum children. Now, what do you mean by the term elementary? Elementary refers to basic education. Is it same as primary education? No. Primary education has got an age limit. But elementary basic education doesn't have any age limit. Anybody can enter this particular school. Of course, the person must be a child, but there is no age limit. Anybody right from 4 years to 15-16 years can join this elementary school. In this school classroom, as we have been given in this poem, there are children, but there is no age limit to these children. There is a tall girl also, grown-up girl, and there is a small child also. So this school provides basic education. So there is no particular methodology followed, nothing. They are just given basic education, and this classroom runs in a slum, which is an illegal settlement. The poem is written by Stephen Spender as he shows the piteous condition of these slum children and moreover the piteous condition of this slum classroom also. There are 4 stanzas to this poem. The first stanza describes the slum children. The second stanza describes their classroom. The third stanza describes their living conditions. And the fourth stanza describes what should be done for them. So the previous 3 stanzas, critics say that it is too pessimistic, but actually that is the reality. So it's a realistic poem telling something about the hardships that these children face as they live in a slum. They have come to this school to get basic education. So first of all, let us see how the children are, those who have come to get education. Then the second stanza shows their classroom. So let us see the first line of the poem, far, far from gusty waves. The poem begins with a repetition and at the same time an alliteration also. Far, far from. The sound far is repeated 3 times, that is alliteration. Far, far, repetition. So far, far from gusty waves, that means the faces of these children are far away from the energetic and enthusiastic waves. You must have seen the waves come and strike the beach, they go back. They have that energy and enthusiasm. But the faces of these children are far away from these gusty waves. Why? The reason they are ill-fed. They don't have proper food to eat. And when you lack the basic necessities, you can't expect these children to be energetic. Moreover, when such condition is there, they are not even enthusiastic to get education. They have just come over there. Probably they must be given food. That's why. So let us see the first line. Far, far from gusty waves, these children's faces. The faces of these children are far away from gusty waves. Although all children are compared to gusty waves, these children are far, far away from those gusty waves. Then, like rootless weeds, the hair torn round their pallor. Rootless weeds, the hair torn. Torn refers to scattered. And pallor refers to dull faces. Like rootless weeds, the hair torn, scattered. So what is the image that we get? That these children, the hair are scattered around the faces. They look like rootless weeds. So what is the poetic device that we are getting here? Simile. Like rootless weeds, the hair torn round their pallor. The faces are dull, and what are scattered around the dull faces? The dry hair that look like rootless weeds. And at the same time, it gives us this image that the children also look like rootless weeds. Weeds are unwanted plants, and they also look like they are unwanted by the society. So there are 2 meanings coming out. Like rootless weeds, the hair torn round the pallor. The faces are dull. Dry hair are scattered around the dull faces, and the children also appear like unwanted by the society. Now there are 3 children described in this first stanza, And through these three children, you'll get an idea that the other children also must have been the same. So first of all, we should know what are the basic necessities of life. We say clothes, food and shelter. So the three children who have been described here, their each basic necessity, one necessity is not properly fulfilled, and that is where we come to know the other children also must have been the same. So let us see the first child, the tall girl. The word tall shows that the girl has grown up. The tall girl with her weighed down head. Do you think so? Her head is bent with the responsibilities? No. The girl does not have proper clothes to wear. The girl has grown up. And as she has grown up, she doesn't get proper clothes. Her head is bent with shame. So the tall girl with her weighed down head. This is the first girl who doesn't get proper clothes to wear. See the second child, the paper seeming boy. The boy is so thin as paper. Now here the poetic device of hyperbole, exaggerated comparison. Nobody can be as thin as paper. But this child is so thin because the child does not get proper food to eat. So the paper seeming boy, the boy is as thin as paper with rat size. There is a metaphor here, rat size. Why? It's not so that the eyes are small like a rat. No, the eyes are in search of food. Just like rat's eyes, the rat is always in search of food that it can gnaw upon something, because it is said that the teeth of the rat, they grow very fast, so they have to continuously bite on hard objects. So their eyes are always in search of food. The boy also has got the eyes being compared to rat's eyes because his eyes always are in search of food. That from somewhere I get food to eat. So the paper seeming boy with rat's eyes, the stunted unlucky heir of twisted bones. The boy remains stunted, not properly grown. He is called unlucky heir, successor. Who is the successor? Like we all are successor of our parents. We inherit what they have, they give to us. We inherit all those things from us. And as privileged people, we have inherited all positives from there. But this child has been called unlucky successor. Why? Because he inherits all the negatives of his parents. How? Just see the remaining line. The stunted unlucky heir of twisted bones. Twisted bones is a disease, malnutrition disease, where the bones get twisted because they don't get proper nutrition. Now here what happens is, this child has inherited that disease from his father, although it is not a genetic disease. The reason? His father was malnourished, the child also is malnourished. So it seems as though he has inherited this disease from his father, although it is not a genetic disease. That means his condition, his parents' condition are the same. So the stunted, unlucky heir of twisted bones, what does he inherit from his father? The disease of twisted bones. Then the teacher says, okay, stand here and start speaking the lessons, start reciting the lessons. When he recites the lessons, the teacher can see something else also in that child. What is that? See the remaining line. Reciting a father's gnarl disease, his lessons from his desk. Gnarl disease are the disease of, again it's a malnutrition disease, where the joints get swollen. Now here what happens is, there are two diseases here. One is where the bones get twisted, and one is where the joints get swollen. This child has inherited both the diseases of his father. The disease where the bones get twisted and the disease where the joints get swollen. So when he recites the lessons, he clearly shows, I have inherited both my father's diseases. Both the diseases of the father can be seen in the child. So here, reciting a father's gnarl disease, his lessons from his desk. Now there is one more boy. So this boy does not get proper food to eat. See the third boy at back of the dim class. The class has been called dim. The reason? There must not be no proper light, and at the same time no proper light of education. Why? The school is run by an NGO. Who cares whether the children get proper education or not in this case? According to Spender, they do not. That's why the classroom has been described as dim. There is one more reason which is given in the second paragraph that I'll discuss afterwards. So now, at back of the dim class, one unnoted, sweet and young, one very small boy sitting, unnoted. People don't notice him much. Sweet and young boy. And what is there in his eyes? His eyes live in a dream. There is a dream in his eyes. And what is the irony of that dream? See, this boy is different from the other two children. The reason, other two children don't have a dream, but this boy has got a dream. What is the irony? That this boy dreams of a squirrel's house in a tree room. Other than this, what does it mean? The child sees the squirrel has got its small house in the tree, but where the squirrel can play freely. The child also dreams, I could have a small house of my own, even though it's a small house, but where I can play freely. That means the child dreams of the basic necessities of life. Is it not ironical? There should be a dream of becoming something in life, but there is a dream of shelter. This child dreams that I could have a house of my home. Other than this means the slum classroom. He is getting shelter here also, but he does not want this shelter. He wants a shelter of his own. So the irony is that this boy dreams of the basic necessity of life, and that is shelter. And he dreams that he could have a small house of his own, even though the house is like a squirrel's house, very small, where the squirrel plays freely. He also dreams of this. So when we say describe the slum children, we have to say that the three children, all the children have been described, that their faces are far away from gusty waves, dull faces, dry hair scattered around the dull faces. Three children described: the tall girl who does not have proper clothes to wear, the paper seeming boy who does not have proper food to eat, and the sweet unnoted boy who dreams of shelter. So if these three children are like that, the others also must have been the same. So if you are asked to describe the slum children, this is the whole thing that you have to write. Now let us discuss the poetic devices from this particular stanza. First is far, far from. Poetic device: alliteration, repetition. Like rootless weeds, simile. Paper seeming boy, hyperbole is there. Rat size, metaphor is there. So all these poetic devices you can see over there. Now let us come to the second stanza, their classroom. When you see their classroom, you will say it's like any other classroom. There are four things hanging there on the walls of the slum classroom. Classroom is very good in order to tell the people that yes, something has been done. Which are these four things, and is the presence of these four things ironical? Let us see. On sour cream walls. If you see the walls have turned sour cream. That means from a long time they have not been painted. So don't you think so? This sour cream color adds to the dimness of the class. So here you see one more reason. The sour cream walls, they add to the dimness of this class. This question was asked in the board exams. Why the slum classroom? Why is the slum classroom described as dim? So on these sour cream walls, donations. How are these walls made? Because of donated money. So either from a long time somebody has not donated money, or the donated money has not been used. Something has happened. So from a long time they have not been painted. The color has turned sour cream. Four things are hanging there. What's the first thing? It's Shakespeare's portrait hanging there. King of literature. His portrait is hanging there. Of course, it's a slum of not of India. So there the Shakespeare's portrait is there. Now let us see what happened. On sour cream was Shakespeare's head. Then the presence of Shakespeare's portrait. That means some studies might be going on. But do you think so? With an empty stomach, they can appreciate and understand Shakespeare's literature? Never. So the same Shakespeare afterwards in stanza 3, you will see it's written, Shakespeare is wicked. The same Shakespeare becomes wicked for them. These children can't understand his poems and his drama, which were normally written for the elite and the aristocratic class. So the children are not able to understand. So the same Shakespeare becomes wicked for them. See the second picture which is hanging there. The second picture is of a civilized city. Civilized dome riding all cities with huge buildings. You can't see the sun in the morning. So when we say that what is hanging there? Shakespeare's head, then huge domes, then a beautiful city's picture. I'll tell you here. Huge buildings are there. Then tall buildings are there. Huge buildings with domes are there. You know that when the building is quite huge, it can't be covered with a straight roof. It has got this dome on it. So which picture is hanging there? The picture of a civilized city. Take the example of Manhattan. When they say that Manhattan is 24/7 working city, and at the same time huge buildings, tall buildings, the sunlight can't even touch the ground. That city's picture is hanging there. Is it ironical? Yes. The irony is that they live in uncivilized slum, and which city's picture is hanging there in the classroom? The picture of a civilized city with tall buildings that you can't even see the sun or the clouds in the morning. Then huge domes, that city's picture is hanging. The presence of this city's picture is ironical because they live in the slum which is uncivilized. So it doesn't match. It's not a good example. Then see the third picture which is hanging there. Bellflowery Tyrolese Valley. Bellflowery Tyrolese Valley. Tyrolese Valley is one of the most beautiful valleys in the world with the flower bluebells. If you must have seen, they have this sort of flowers there. They look like inverted bells. The whole valley is so beautiful. That beautiful valley's picture is hanging there. Is it ironical? Yes. They are explaining the beauty of nature. To whom? To those children who live in dirt and squalor of the slum. You try to explain them the beauty of nature. You don't take these children close to nature, but you just hang a picture there showing the beauty of nature. Is the presence of this picture ironical? Yes. What is the fourth thing that is hanging there? A world map. An open-handed world map. Why is it called open-handed? Because with open hands, it's welcoming everybody. Come, see where you live. Like when we saw Google Maps for the first time, we wanted to see where we live. Now here, these children also want to see where they live. Will they see it? No. Slums are illegal settlements. They are never shown on the map, and these children feel cheated. So let us see those lines. An open-handed world map which is showing the world, awarding the world its world. That means it's showing the remaining people of the world, see, this is your world. But see the last second line. But for these children, these windows, not this map, their world. For these children, these windows are their world, not this map. Because on this map, they are not able to locate the slum. So what they see from the windows, that is their world. So for these children, these windows, not this map, their world. The windows are their world because what do they see from the windows? The slum. And the last ironical lines where all their futures painted with a fog. They live in the slum where they have no future. The future is painted with a fog. Fog, blackness. Do you expect that with this elementary education, their life would change? Never. They're just getting education for a formality. So these people have got no future because only one thing can change their life, and that is the light of education, and they don't get proper education also. So where all their futures painted with a fog, this is where we understand this is their slum classroom. Then we say a narrow street sealed in with a lead sky. What is their world? Narrow street, lead sky, dark sky. No sky, even the sky, it doesn't mean that the nature here discriminates. No, nature has its blue sky. But for these children, sky means hope, and there is no hope. The sky seems to be black over there. And see the last line of the second stanza. Far, far from rivers, capes, and stars of words. In their world, there are no rivers. There are no capes, no mountain peaks, no stars of words. When people get lost in desert and all, the sky gives them the sense of direction. But these people, they have no stars of words. What can shine and give them direction in their lives? Stars of words, education. And that education is not given to them. So this is where we understand. How is the slum classroom? Sour cream. Because of not getting proper paint there, the walls have turned sour cream. How many things are hanging there on the walls? 4. The presence of all these 4 is ironical. Shakespeare becomes wicked. They can't understand his literature. The beautiful cities, the civilized city cheats them because they live in uncivilized slum. They can't understand the beauty of Tyrolese Valley, and at the same time, they are not able to locate their slum on the world map. And what is their world? Narrow street, dark sky, future painted with a fog, no rivers, no mountain peaks, and no guiding education. So 2 stanzas we have done. The first stanza which describes the slum children, and the second stanza which describes the slum classroom. In the second session, we are going to discuss what are their living conditions and what should be done for them. Thank you.